Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're taking a fascinating, albeit pretty dense, biological chapter and translating it into a highly structured journey. We are looking at locomotion and movement. We're talking about the sheer mechanics of how our biological engines and structural framework actually operate to get us around in the world. To kick things off, let me ask you this. What is the exact difference between movement and locomotion? Have you ever really thought about it? I mean, right now, your heart is beating, blood is pumping, maybe you're blinking or just shifting your posture in your chair. All of those are absolutely movements. But are they locomotion? Well, the answer is no, and there's a really precise biological reason why. Locomotion specifically refers to voluntary movements that result in an actual change of place or location. Walking, running, climbing, swimming, those are locomotory movements. So the crucial takeaway here is that while your heart beating or your digestive system moving food along is for sure a movement, using your limbs to physically walk to a completely new habitat or location is locomotion. Basically, remember this. All locomotions are movements, but not all movements are locomotions. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover 1. Basics of movement. 2. Inside muscle fibers. 3. How muscles contract. 4. The skeletal framework. 5. Joints. And finally, 6. System disorders. Section 1. The basics of movement. Biological engines. To truly understand how we move from point A to point B, we first have to understand the engines that power our body. And actually, our bodies rely on 3 totally distinct types of muscle engines. First up, we have skeletal muscles. These have a striped or striated appearance under a microscope, and they're entirely under our voluntary control. These are the primary cables and engines we consciously fire up to move and change posture. Next, we have visceral muscles. These guys are smooth, no striations, and they operate completely involuntarily. Think of the walls of your digestive tract shifting food along on autopilot. You don't even have to think about it. And finally, cardiac muscles. These are the highly specialized, striated, but strictly involuntary muscles of your heart. But when we're talking about locomotion, those skeletal muscles are the undisputed stars of the show. Section 2. Inside our muscle fibers. Zooming in. And this brilliantly illustrates how a whole skeletal muscle is essentially a collection of muscle bundles, called fascicles, that are held together by a common connective tissue layer called fascia. It's actually a lot like looking at a thick, heavy-duty industrial cable that's made up of smaller, tightly packed wires. Each of those smaller wires inside the bundle is an individual muscle fiber. Now, zooming in even further, inside those individual muscle fibers are myofilaments with alternating dark and light bands. That is exactly what gives skeletal muscle its striated, striped look. The actual functional unit of contraction here is called a sarcomere. It's made of 2 highly organized overlapping protein filaments. You have the thin filaments made of a protein called actin, which hang out in the light I bands, and the thick filaments made of myosin, found in the dark A bands. Remember those 2 names. Actin and myosin. They are the true microscopic engines making everything happen. Section 3. How muscles actually contract. The mechanism. I'm going to slow down the pacing just a bit here because this microscopic chemical process is wonderfully complex, but so rewarding to understand. This is the sliding filament theory, the step-by-step process of how we actually generate force. It all starts with a signal from your central nervous system, sent down a motor neuron. This signal hits the muscle junction and triggers a sudden flood of calcium ions right into the muscle fiber. Now, in a resting state, the actin filaments are basically locked away. Their active binding sites are covered up by a protein called troponin. But when that calcium floods in, it binds to the troponin, shifting it completely out of the way and exposing the actin. Once exposed, the myosin heads reach up and grab onto the actin, forming what's called a cross bridge. Using energy from ATP, these myosin heads act exactly like tiny oars on a rowboat. They pull the thin actin filaments inward toward the center, sliding the filaments past each other. This shortens the entire sarcomere, and boom, your muscle physically contracts. Section 4. The human skeletal framework. Zooming out. Now, biological engines, no matter how powerful they are totally useless without a rigid chassis to push against. 206. It's a simple number, but it has massive biological significance. This is the total number of individual bones that make up the framework of an adult human body, working alongside a few crucial cartilages. And this rigid framework is split into 2 primary, highly organized divisions. The first division is the axial skeleton, which is made up of 80 bones that form the main central axis of our body. This includes the skull, with its 22 cranial and facial bones acting as a vault for the brain. It includes the vertebral column, 26 stacked units that house and protect your incredibly delicate spinal cord. And it includes the sternum and the 12 pairs of ribs that form a literal cage to protect your heart and lungs. Basically, the axial skeleton is your core protective structure and the primary anchor point for everything else. The second division is the appendicular skeleton, which makes up the remaining 126 bones. These are the bones of your limbs, your arms and your legs, each containing 30 individual bones, and the girdles that attach them back to that axial skeleton we just looked at. The pectoral girdle connects your arms, and the pelvic girdle connects your legs. So, if the axial skeleton is the core, the appendicular skeleton provides the dynamic, primary levers for grasping objects and, of course, for locomotion itself. Section 5. Joints where bones meet. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is realizing that having 206 rigid bones wouldn't do us a whole lot of good if we couldn't actually bend or articulate them. Joints are the crucial fulcrums or hinges of our framework. Without them, our skeleton would just be a rigid statue. But counterintuitively, not all joints are actually meant to move. Look at fibrous joints. They allow essentially zero movement. They use dense connective tissue to literally suture the flat bones of your skull together into a solid, unmoving hermit. Next, we have cartilaginous joints, like the ones between the vertebrae of your spine. They allow for limited movement, just enough for flexibility without compromising the protection of your spinal cord. But the absolute rock stars of locomotion are the synovial joints. These feature a fluid-filled cavity between the bones, which allows for considerable, smooth movement. Your knees acting like mechanical hinges, and your shoulders, which are these incredible ball and socket joints, are prime examples. Section 6. When the system breaks, real-world impact. We've spent this explainer looking at perfect mechanical function, but we really need to ground this in reality by looking at what happens when the engines, the framework, or the hinges unfortunately malfunction. For instance, myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder that attacks the neuromuscular junction itself. That means the central nervous system signal fails to properly reach the muscle, leading to severe fatigue and paralysis. Muscular dystrophy involves the progressive genetic degeneration of the skeletal muscle tissue. Then you have skeletal system issues like osteoporosis, where bone mass progressively decreases, drastically increasing the chance of fractures, a condition often related to aging and dropping estrogen levels. And finally, gout, which is severe inflammation of the joints caused by a super painful accumulation of uric acid crystals. Understanding these specific conditions is exactly why studying the underlying mechanics of locomotion truly matters for our long-term health and well-being. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. How will understanding your biological engines and framework change the way you move and protect your body today? Knowing all about the microscopic pulling of those tiny actin and myosin ores and the precise fluid-filled articulation of your synovial joints, I really hope you walk away today with a newfound appreciation for every single step you take. Thank you so much for joining me as we broke down this chapter. Keep feeding that curiosity, and I will see you in the next explainer.